Let's just be honest. Can we have some honesty? Can we start the day with some honesty here today? Will you guys do that with me? Some honesty? Most of us live with a low-grade hum of not enough. In fact, I want you to fill in that blank just real quickly. What is it that you don't have enough of? If you're a mom today and then you were getting the kids ready because your husband's at church doing setup and tear down, you probably did not have enough time to get yourself ready today. But I want you to fill in the blank for yourself. What is, I just don't have enough. What is that? Is it time? I just don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough margin to do the things that I want to do. I don't have enough security. Retirement's coming and I'm just not prepared for it. I just don't have enough. We live in the richest nation on earth, and yet we live in this myth of scarcity. And in that space, greed begins to take root. And I know when we begin to talk about greed, it's easy for us to see greed in others, right? Like I remember when my son Owen, he's our oldest, and we were the first among all of our friends to have kids, and he's this wonderful, beautiful, precious, and all of our friends are kind of watching the mistakes that we make so they can be better parents, which is a great way to learn to be a better parent. And yet as our son got older, other couples started to have kids, and now when we got together, the adults would kind of form a circle and we would hang out, and the kids are kind of just playing in the playroom, but we're having conversations. It's working out pretty good. And then all of a sudden, my about 1.5-year-old son does something that just shocks us like crazy. He walks over to one of the other kids and he says this word this way. I think he saw it in a Disney movie. He just goes, "Mine?" And he rips it from another child. And I think I heard my wife gasp from across the room. Right? It's easy. At least kids are honest about their greed, right? They're just right out there. I want that. Give it to me, right? Or we see the greed in other people. We live in a nation with multi-billion-dollar businesses where CEOs make tens of millions of dollars, and the people that work at the store, the people that work at the bottom of the food chain are barely making a living wage. And we go, oh, that's so greedy. There's greed all around us, and yet rarely have I heard somebody say, oh my goodness, I'm really struggling with greed. Isn't it funny? It's funny how we can see the greed in everything and everyone else except for ourselves. In fact, I love small groups. I love being in small groups. I love leading them. I love benefiting from the life community that's in them. We're getting ready to start a new small group semester here in just a little while. I have probably been, I'm telling you, like decades of experience being in small groups. And people, when they get vulnerable and transparent, they begin to know the group, they will share anything. I mean, hey, I have this lust problem. Hey, I lied to my spouse. Hey, I'm an angry dad. I've not been parenting my kids the way, they will talk about just about everything. But in over 10 years of being in different small groups, I have never heard anybody say, man, I've just really been greedy lately. I've never heard it. And I think the reason that we don't see it in ourselves is because in our minds, you have to have a lot to be greedy. You have to have a lot. Only rich people can be greedy, right? And so we don't look at ourselves. We don't think that what we have is a lot. And so we don't think that we are affected by greed. But greed is simply a desire for more. It's just desiring more. And we live in a culture. We are constantly surrounded by a culture that whispers to us, more is better. Think about it. If I could just get a car, if I could just get a house in that neighborhood, if we could just go from a 3-bed to a 4-bed, if I could just have a bigger house, if I could just drive a nicer car, if I could take my family on better vacations, better, bigger, newer. But the truth is that the pursuit of more, especially when it's unchecked and unchallenged, the pursuit of more often leads us to wanting more. I want to welcome you back to our summer series called Keys to the Kingdom. And over the summer, what we are doing is we are diving into the parables that Jesus taught, and we are unlocking the keys of the kingdom. And let me explain this maybe a little bit different way. I was having this conversation with Jernigan, our lead pastor, earlier this week. I wonder if people know the difference between God's kingdom and how that actually impacts their life. You need to understand that this world has a system. This world has a kingdom. There is a way that this world operates. I'm not talking about America or Russia. I'm not talking about nations. I'm talking about the ways of this world. The ways of this world are the strong rule over the weak. Those who have many times can oppress those who have not. And it's a dog-eat-dog world, and we're all just trying to make the best that we can. And so I'm going to do what's best for me, and you do what's best for you. And our hope is that we don't bounce off of each other here. That's kind of the ways of the world. There's so many people that are going without in our world. There's so many people that are sick. There are so many people that just can't find their way into whether it's freedom from drugs and alcohol abuse, whether it's freedom into unhealthy relationship after unhealthy relationship. And if you've ever gotten to the place to where you're dissatisfied with the way that this world works, I'm with you. It's not good. It's not great. It's depressing. And so when Jesus came, when he comes teaching this new gospel and about this new kingdom, he's talking about what it looked like if Jesus were here on earth with us, and if he were leading us. This is the way that we would live, and our lives would be better. In fact, I also had to think about it this way. I don't know if you grew up religious. I grew up in a religious context. We went to church every Sunday, a lot of times every Wednesday night, every Sunday night. I mean, it was like church. And in that environment that I grew up, my understanding of Christianity is that we have a sin problem, right? Jesus came to die for our sins, right? You learn this in Sunday school, right? The flannel graph or whatever it is they use. You learn about Jesus and dying on the cross for your sins. And what you do is you surrender your life to him now. And one day you get to see the goodness of God in heaven, right? And again, probably not the way it was taught, but the way that it was caught for me was, well, on this earth you miss out, but when you get to heaven, God makes it up to you. And the reason I thought that is because as a young teenager trying to follow Jesus, I would look at all of my friends and all the fun that they were having, and I would go, well, I can't do that. Yep, not allowed to do that. Yep, Bible says don't do that. And so I'm missing out on all these things that I kind of feel like I want to do, but I know I'm not supposed to do them, so I shouldn't do them. But that's okay. God will make it up in heaven, and that is not what the kingdom of God is all about. In fact, listen to me. A lot of the times we get hung up on words. When the Bible talks about eternal life and everlasting life, those things include heaven, but they are not limited to what goes on in heaven. When you confess Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, when you become a part of his kingdom, you become a carrier of that kingdom. And you get to live in the benefit and the blessing and the freedom that God has provided, not when you get to heaven, but right now. So you become a carrier of God's kingdom wherever you go, which means that if you're a follower of Jesus, not only should your life be different, but as you're kind of bouncing off people that are operating according to the world system, they're going to notice a difference in you. And you begin to impact, as a carrier of the kingdom, you begin to impact other people. That's what the kingdom is. Everlasting life is not when you get to heaven and fat dudes are naked and playing harps. That's not what everlasting life is. Everlasting life is getting the richness and the fullness on this side of eternity and to be with God in the ages to come. That's what Jesus is talking about. And his parables many times unlock key truths and mysteries about his kingdom. These kingdoms should shift our focus and touch our hearts so that we can understand what God's kingdom is like and what it looks like for us to fully live in it. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to dive into one of these parables. And this parable is in Luke chapter 12. It's been called by many the parable of the rich fool. So you can turn to chapter 12 if you have your Bibles with you. If I have not met you yet, my name is Brian. I'm one of the pastors here. Our lead pastor, Jernigan, is on vacation this week. He's having a great time with his family. Y'all just pray for him. As leaders, especially primary leaders, it is so good to get away. Okay, to set it down, to go spend time with family, to make memories. And so would you guys just pray for him? Sometimes we feel like our leaders don't need prayer because they must be good. They're a pastor. But that's not true. We need help. We need rest. We need prayer. In fact, the scriptures command us to pray for our leaders. So if you would commit to over the next week or two praying for Jernigan and his family, that God would just rejuvenate and refresh them, let me hear you say amen. All right, thank you for that. All right, Luke chapter 12. Here's what's going on. Jesus is fully engaged in his earthly ministry. He is cat's out of the bag. Jesus is telling everybody, he's the Messiah, and he's moving towards Jerusalem. You need to understand that as he's moving towards Jerusalem, he knows what ultimately is going to happen in Jerusalem. He knows that his time is limited. He knows that eventually in Jerusalem they will crucify him. So this is like the 13th, 14th round. This is like the fourth quarter, to put it in Chiefs terms. We are getting down. He is eyeing up the end of his ministry, and he knows he has some things that he needs to teach and preach and some things that he has to hand off to his disciples. So he is laser focused on the way to Jerusalem. And as he's going, he's teaching all these crowds that are gathering. And the crowds have gathered so much that they are literally stepping over each other. People are being trampled. Maybe imagine a concert you've been to where everybody's just trying to like push each other out of the way to just get as close to that star as they possibly could. That's what's happening. And while that's happening, Jesus is trying to preach. He's trying to tell them what the kingdom is like. And in the middle of this sermon that he's preaching, he's got a guy interrupt him. And so look what happens here in Luke chapter 12, verse 13. Then someone called out from the crowd, "Teacher, please tell my brother to divide our father's estate with me." Now, you need to know that in these times, these types of sibling disputes around inheritance were very, very normal. First of all, the firstborn son in the family, we get a double portion of what everybody else gets. So the way that our culture works, if you have any kind of a will, somebody passes on, how many kids you got? 3 kids, great. Cut it in third, everybody gets what they want, unless there's something different in the will. Not in Jesus' culture's day. Who's the firstborn? Okay, you get double, all right? So you get half, and you two get a quarter if there's 3 kids. See how that works? And so it didn't seem fair. The other thing that would happen is sometimes younger siblings would usurp the right of the birthright, and they would, by force or by trickery or some other means, they would take the inheritance, and then the older sibling would not get their fair share. The Bible does not tell us what kind of dispute this is, but Jesus is teaching, and somebody interrupts him to settle this family dispute. Can you imagine if we were doing what we were doing this morning? I'm talking, you're listening. And in the middle of one of my points, somebody just stands up on the front row and said, "Preacher, I need some help. We need some help in our marriage. Can we do that right now? Preacher, I need help with my finances right now. Hey, my brother and I, we don't get along." I mean, it would be chaos, right? And Jesus in the midst of this, and what's so beautiful is that he doesn't answer his specific question, but look what Jesus does. Jesus replied and he said, "Friend, who made me a judge over you and to decide such things as that?" And then he said, "Beware, guard against every kind of greed, for life is not measured by what you own." Almost in a way for the whole crowd to hear. Jesus is saying like, "Hey man, I'm not a judge. Like, I did not come here to settle sibling disputes about inheritance. That's not why I'm here. I'm here for something much more important. I'm here to tell people about the kingdom. But since you brought it up, let's talk about greed." And after he gives this warning, right, that life doesn't consist of just the things you have. I love this. Jesus begins, look at verse 16, and then he told a story. So here comes the parable. "A rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. He said to himself, 'What should I do? I don't have room for all my crops.' Then he said," I love this because it's an internal dialogue. He's talking to himself. And then he said, 'I know. I'll tear down my barns and I'll build bigger ones. And then I'll have room enough to store all my wheat and other goods. And I'll sit back and say to myself, my friend, you have enough stored away for years to come. Now take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry.'" I want to give you some cultural context this morning so that you can hear this, how the people that Jesus was speaking to would probably have heard this. You need to understand that things like food and clothing in these times are actually commodities. They're currency. So if you saw a guy that had a fully stocked barn with wheat, you were going, "Man, that dude is stacked." Right? Like this is money we're talking about. This is how you live. And also in these times, remember, we don't have the Weather Channel. We don't have the internet telling us, we didn't have the Farmer's Almanac to tell us what the next force. They don't know how they do that. That just feels weird, but they can write about it years in advance. They didn't know what was coming. They didn't know when a war was going to break out. They didn't know when a famine was coming. And so to store things up like this meant that you had a little bit of safety and security for a little while. You could do the math. If I've got this much wheat, I've got 2 years worth of food in there. And every day you're eating off of that, but when you harvest, you can build it back up, very much like we look at our paychecks every month or our money in the bank. We see it fluctuate. We see it go up and down. And so what this guy does on the surface, it seems prudent. I'm going to build a bigger barn. I'm going to cast a wider safety net so that no matter what comes, I'll be okay. But then the story takes a turn. Verse 20, but God said to him, you fool, you will die this night, and then who will get everything you worked for? Yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God. Now, let's clarify a few things. First of all, being wealthy or having money is not the issue here, or even having a good financial plan. You should have a good financial plan. It's not about that. Sudden death in the Bible, when sudden death would happen to somebody, it was assumed that that sudden death came about as a result of God's judgment. The religious culture of the Old Testament was very superstitious, right? So if you're being blessed by God, oh, you must be doing the right thing. You must be living righteously, right? Now, what's true in principle isn't always true in promise, right? You can be doing things right and you can actually suffer for it. But in their economy, if you're being blessed by God, oh, that person must be doing something right. But then the sudden judgment comes. Okay, you're gone. You've worked all your life to build up these bigger barns and all that safety and security. You don't get to enjoy it. And that safety and security did not keep your life from ending. So here's the mystery and the mastery of this parable, is that the rich fool and the sibling who has the dispute about inheritance are actually the same person. And it's two sides of the same coin. See, the rich person lived in abundance, and his response to that abundance was greed, and the sibling had a lack of abundance, and his response was greed. Because that's all greed is the pursuit or the desire for more. And what Jesus does in this passage is so incredible because he doesn't respond to the original question, but he does expose the heart behind it. And this is why. There's a couple of big ideas that I want you to see out of this passage today. But the problem is not being or becoming rich. And before we move forward, I do want to say this because I've been in so many messages like this where we talk about rich, and that everybody in the room that has a great career, that's done a good job, and you've got a good 401k, or you're building your own business and you're crushing it, there's a propensity for you to feel ashamed or embarrassed, and you should not be. That's not what this is about. The issue isn't being or becoming rich. The issue is when wealth, whether it's for enjoyment or security, becomes our obsession. And that's why 1 Timothy 6:10 says this, for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Not making it, not saving it, not stewarding well, but the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And some, craving money, have wandered from the true faith and have pierced themselves with many sorrows. So what does greed look like? And how can we recognize it and deal with it in and of ourselves based off of what we're seeing here in Luke chapter 12? And here's the first thing. You need to understand that greed is not about your financial standing. It's a condition of the heart. See, the rich fool had abundance. The sibling did not, but they both were dealing with the same heart issue, is the pursuit of more. You don't have to be rich to be greedy. You just have to be consumed with the idea of more. More success, more money, more stuff. That's all that greed is. In 1928, a journalist from the New Republic sat down with John D. Rockefeller. You might have heard the name before. And he interviewed him and heard the whole story of how he had built his companies and amassed all of this wealth. And when the journalist began to understand the weight of how much money this guy had for his time, many estimates say that if you take inflation into account, he's still the richest person who's ever lived in the Western world. And he asked John D. Rockefeller, look, you've got more money than you could spend in multiple lifetimes. Yeah, I still see you working so hard. You're buying, you're selling, you're moving, you're shaking. Like, how much is enough? And his famous response is just a little more. Just a little more. You don't have to be wealthy to be greedy. You just have to be chasing more. So let me just ask you real quick before we move on, where in your life, where are you chasing more? Where are you consumed with the idea of more? Because greed is not about your financial standing. You don't have to own a mansion to struggle with greed. It's a condition of the heart. Second thing, security doesn't come from what you have, it comes from who you trust. The rich guy is doing well in the store. He's doing so well that he needs more storage to cover more of his things. And so he looks around at the stuff that he's accumulated and he says, oh, I can relax. I don't need to work. I don't need to worry. I can just sit back and relax. You see, some of us are driven towards money, not necessarily out of what it can buy me and what I want to buy a boat and I want to buy a car and I want to buy. It's not about that. The reason that you're driven to make and save and keep money is because of fear. Maybe you grew up in a home where a parent lost a job and instantly your financial well-being was impacted and you had to adjust. Maybe you lost a parent. And among all the other things you were dealing with, it caused your family to deal with a new financial reality. And there are times when we are born into and raised in situations like that, that this overwhelming fear is just right behind the door, just telling you, hey, it's not enough yet. Get more in the bank, get more in that 401k, save it up, save it up, save it up. And again, the problem is not with planning or good financial stewardship. The issue is when we are trusting in a thing for our security instead of a person. I remember the first time in my life that I was impacted by this reality was back in 2020. Many of you can probably relate to this, but we had been serving at a church, my wife and I, in Raytown, Missouri for about 8 years, and we knew about 8 months before spring of 2020 that we were getting ready to wind our ministry down there, that we kind of had a longer runway. There were some things that I needed to hand off within that church and leadership and some things like that, so they gave me kind of a longer runway. My last day was supposed to be April 1st, 2020, planned out almost a year in advance. Do you guys remember what happened March 13th, 2020? You should remember because you were bored for the next year and a half after that. COVID happened. And truthfully, we knew our season had ended, but we didn't know what we were going into yet. There were a couple of different options out there. And I'm heading, the nationwide shutdown is happening. I'm out of work. I'm looking for work. I'm having conversations with people. Who's going to hire a guy to come talk to a room full of people when you can't put people in a room? And for the first time, I began to look at what have I saved up? And the truth is, we had done pretty good and we had some money in savings. We had been given a severance package from that church, kind of normal when folks leave, and we had not had to touch that. We had left that in savings. But no one knew what was going to happen to the world at that point. We didn't know when life was going to get back to somewhat normal. We did not know when churches were going to be able to start meeting again. And we're sitting there unemployed. I just remember thinking, oh my goodness. Not only is it important to plan, and most of us are living with less margin than we really need, but that margin can be taken away in an instant, can't it? God was very good to our family. And that time I didn't want to leave town for just a job. If I was going to leave town or if I was going to go to a new church, I wanted to really feel like I could be there for a while. And so I didn't see the church thing. And I had a friend of a friend who had this little company like that helps people get their business online, like their brick and mortar store. And so I went to work for them. I was the first of 18 people they hired over a 3-month period, and they grew by about 400% in about 3 months because everybody was trying to get their brick and mortar online because you couldn't get people into your brick and mortar. So God was good to us. But I learned that in an instant, that safety net can disappear. Because security doesn't come from what you have, it comes from who you trust. Jesus isn't against planning and possessions. He's not against either of those. The issue is when we use these things as an excuse not to invest in heavenly riches. Matthew chapter 6 says it this way. These are also the words of Jesus. He says, don't store up treasures here on earth where moths eat them and rust destroys them and where thieves can break in and steal. Don't build your kingdom here. Why? What are we supposed to do? Store your treasures in heaven where moth and rust cannot destroy and thieves do not break in and steal. Wherever your treasure is, your heart will be also. Jesus isn't against the planning. He's not against the preparation. He's not against the safety net. But when it's used as an excuse to not invest in God's kingdom, beware of greed disguised as wisdom. Greed tells you, hey, once I have enough, well, then I'll start giving. Once I have enough, then I can relax. Once I have enough, then I'll have some peace. But peace isn't found in possessions. It comes from a person, and his name is Jesus. That's where we find our safety and our security. And the third thing we can see from this story is that money can buy a lifestyle, but only God can give you a full life. Money can buy a lifestyle. How many of you have heard the phrase, well, money can't buy happiness? Raise your hand if you've heard that. Keep your hand up if you've repeated that. Can I tell you something? You were lying. You were lying. Yes, money can't buy happiness, but money can buy a lot of things that can make you happy, at least for a little while. I mean, just a little while ago, our family was invited out to go to Lake Weatherby with some friends. They have this nice little pontoon boat, and they just shared that with us. And we had a good old time. We have a couple of kids. They have 2 kids. We have 4 kids. We're just swimming and floating, having a good old time, laughing. The kids are jumping off of a slide. We're just having a good old time. I mean, it was fun. I experienced a lot of happiness. In fact, I got to confess to you that I'm kind of the guy that normally, hey, we've been around people all day. I mean, I'm in ministry, so my job is people, and I love people. I do. But can you just have your fill? Like, okay, it's been a long day. That's normally who I am, but we're having so much fun. The sun went down. I think it was 10 o'clock. We're still out on the lake, having a good time. Our kids are giggling. My kids are even acting like they like each other. I'm like, we're not leaving. We're moving in right here on the beach. Like, my kids are getting along. This is great. Money can't buy happiness, but it does buy things that can make you happy, at least for a time. But we have to be careful. What kingdom are we investing in? Also, Jesus' word in Matthew chapter 6, he says this, that no one can serve 2 masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. And I find it interesting, of all the things that Jesus could kind of put God on this side and something else on this side. I mean, it could have been God and sin. It could have been the truth and the lie. It could have been anything, but God chose to call out our love of money. Why is that? Because pursuit of money, pursuit of the things that we can accumulate in this life, on this planet, it's what we have to do in order to build our own kingdom. And when we get caught up building our own kingdom, like the rich man, we usually fail and neglect to participate in God's kingdom. In this story, Jesus says that, woe is to you, you fool, you invested in all these things, but you don't have a relationship with God. How do we know he didn't have a relationship with God? Well, just a couple of things we can speculate. One, there's no mention of the communal generosity that is a part of the Levitical law. I mean, this was such a deep and abiding thing that if you had these fields that are crushing it for the rich guy, you were not supposed to harvest all of it. This is kind of like the welfare system before welfare was welfare. You leave the corners of that crop. If you have extra, you leave it so that other people can come and get what they need to at least survive. I mean, you're not going to get rich off of it, but you can at least survive. God thought of that long before government thought of that, as a way to be a blessing to other people. There's also provisions in the Old Testament that if God does bless you above and beyond what you need, that you can bring to the temple a thanksgiving offering. This isn't like a 10% baseline, let's get started offering. This isn't even a missionary came in and showed us, sad pictures of starving children, so I got moved, so I gave something. This is a wow, God, you have been so good that I want to take a piece of what you've given us above and beyond what we need, and I just want to say right back at you, big guy. Thank you. Thank you for blessing. Thank you for allowing us to thrive. Thank you for whatever it is. Thanksgiving offering. We don't see any kind of Thanksgiving offering that. All he does is he builds bigger barns and he keeps it to himself. And when we pursue more, we find ourselves building our own kingdom. A guy by the name of C.S. Lewis said it this way, that prosperity knits a man to the world. Prosperity knits a man to the world. He feels he is finding his place in it, while really it is finding its place in him. When we begin to get blessed, we're doing a good job, we're building a career, our business is thriving, and we get to begin to experience some of the rewards of that. If we're not careful, the world begins to find a place in it. We begin to get excited about our own kingdom. And again, we fail to the lie that the more stuff you have, the more enjoyable it is, right? And here's the difference. It is fun to buy things. It is fun. I'm not going to lie to you. It is fun to go shopping. It is fun to buy. Every house I bought, I've been excited about it. Now, I'd be more excited if I ever actually paid a house off, but I get excited that we have a new place to live, right? Buying is fun, but owning is often hard. Like a lake house and a couple of jet skis sounds like fun until your lake house needs a new roof and both jet skis are broken down and sinking into the water. Now it's not fun. Buying is fun, but owning many times feels a lot of work. And just having more doesn't always lead to more enjoyment. Proverbs 15:16 says it's better to have little with the fear of the Lord than to have great treasure and inner turmoil. I heard somebody else say it this way once, that the more stuff you own, the more your stuff owns you. I told you about that season that we were trying to figure out what we're going to do in 2020, and we were able to work for that organization for about 6 months, but in my heart just felt like, yeah, but church and the ministry and people, like, God, I know that you've called me to do that, and thank you for providing this, but like, God, where would you call me? And through a process, we got connected to an awesome church in South Florida, and just awesome church, killer, just a spirit of worship in that place. Because of where they're located in West Palm County, less than 3% of West Palm Beach are religious in any way whatsoever. So you want to talk about a least reached people group? You want to talk about the 1040 window? Let's talk about the 33460, because it is one of the least reached places in all of the United States of America. Not only that, but it is the drug and alcohol rehab capital of the East Coast. People come down by the hundreds and thousands to find freedom from alcohol and drug addiction. And so every single day, people are coming in that desperately need, like they don't know if they're waking up tomorrow if they don't find Jesus. You know what I mean? Like people that their lives are messy, their stories are messy. It was a fun place to serve and to work. But when we were in the process of being hired down there, I've been kind of looking on the map, and I'm doing a little bit of research, trying to be a good financial planner. And I'm noticing that West Palm is not the same cost of living as Raytown, Missouri. It's just not. And I'm like, how do we make up the 28.5% difference? Like, what do we do here? And so as we're feeling like this is what God's doing, I'm being interviewed by almost everybody on this large staff. And one of the questions I'm asking is, hey, how do y'all afford to do this down here? I mean, I know what I signed up for. I didn't do this to get wealthy. I get that. But like, how do you make it work? And one of the people we talked to, they said, oh, well, we do Airbnb. And we're like, oh, well, tell me more about that. Because I'm a little bit of a weekend warrior. I like home projects. I like real estate. My wife's an interior designer. And we've been able to kind of buy, invest in, and flip a few houses. But tell me about this Airbnb thing. And long story short, rather than buying our own property down there, we stayed in a smaller rental and we bought our first Airbnb. And as COVID was lifting and our Airbnb was hitting the market, over 1,000 people a day were moving to South Florida. And so not only do you have snowbird traffic and not only do you have vacation traffic, but now you have all this transient traffic of people that need a temporary place to live for 3 or 6 months before they get their own place down there. And we were in the right place at the right time. And wouldn't you know it, we bought one of those. We barely could keep it open long enough to get the place cleaned and rent it out to the next person. So much so that a year later, we bought another one. Who would have thought it? A little old youth pastor from Northeast Ohio. I have an Airbnb empire in South Florida. Who would have known? Man, it was fun. I love getting to build something. I love getting to do it with my wife. I said this in the first service, so it's not like a brownie points thing, but some people say, oh, I just can't work with my spouse. I'm sorry for you. I love working with my wife. She's great at everything I'm not great at, which is a lot. And I love that. I love being able to partner with her. It was a wonderful journey, but as God moved us back to Kansas City and we began to get just fully connected with Discover Church and moving forward, all of a sudden, what was super fun to run an Airbnb 15 minutes across town became a giant headache trying to run 4 of those guys from 8 states away. And as we began to go like, hey, this isn't working for us anymore. Like it's we got some things going on with our kids we're trying to figure out. We're trying to get landed in a new place and build some community. And every time we get moving forward, something is breaking down there. Something's happening down there. Like this just isn't. And as we started talking about selling them, something weird happened to me that I was not prepared for. What happened inside of me is that part of my ego as a man had been tied to the fact that my wife and I were able to build those and buy those in South Florida. Because I have a little insecurity that because I work at a church and I don't have a real big boy job, that you guys won't really think I'm a good leader or that you would really want to listen to what I have to say. It's not because you've done something. It's a little insecurity that I've had. And it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice to introduce myself. Oh, I'm Brian. Oh, yeah, well, we just came from South Florida. We got a couple of Airbnbs down there. See, I'll throw that in there. Pretend to be humble. And guys, hear me. I know that God orchestrated that for us. I know that there was some luck involved. Yes, we stewarded our gifts and we were in the right place at the right time and all that kind of stuff. But what had become a tool to fuel our family's vision shifted into a treasure. It had knit itself in my heart. And as we were rightfully getting ready to release those things and to cash out on them, I was struggling with my ego. The more stuff you own, the more potential that stuff will own you. And this brings me to the kingdom key, the big idea for the day, is that true fulfillment in life isn't built on your financial standing. It's built on your faith. Many of us were chasing things that won't lead us to fulfill or secure. It won't. You can pad all the cash you want to. You can have all the 401ks you want to, but we've seen how those things can fail us. And here's the thing. I'm not telling you don't work hard. This is not a condemnation for all the people that have worked hard and taken risks, and you got a pile of money in the bank. This is not a condemnation on you at all. It is a warning for all of us, whether you're in that seat or you're in the job market for the first time, you just got out of college, you got a mountain of debt, and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do with your life. We all have the same thing in common. Is that greed wants to connect itself to our soul. And Jesus says in our kingdom, in my kingdom, fulfillment isn't built on your financial standing. It's built on who you trust. It's built on faith. And so how can we look at the greed in our lives and how can we examine ourselves and how can we find some freedom from the pool of greed? And I want to give you 3 practical things as you leave today. First of all, I want you to pay attention to your cravings. What are you constantly daydreaming about? Because greed doesn't always look like a pile of money. It may not be money at all for you. It may be, I need some me time. But if you're a mom in this room, you got a few toddlers around, you just want space. You will lock yourself in the bathroom if you have to. I just need a minute. I just need to let it air out. It doesn't have to be money. But this greed, it acts like a restlessness inside of us, and that constant desire for more and better and newer. So what do you daydream about? Take some time this week to take inventory of your passions and ask yourself, what am I building? What am I really pursuing? Pay attention to your cravings. Number 2, embrace simplicity. Embrace simplicity. One of the best joys of moving down to South Florida is that in order to do that move, our home had to downside. And with that, our closet had to downside, right? Our closet had to get smaller. We had a 3,000 square foot house in Raytown. By the time we moved down to one part of West Palm, we had a 2,000 square foot house. And by the time we actually moved into a place that belonged to us, we had a 1,400 square foot house and we added a baby to it. So there's 6 of us living in 14,000 square feet. Some of you that might seem big. Some of you, your basement is bigger than that. But it's pretty cramped. And with that 1,400 square foot house came smaller closets. And so my wife and I had to have a very heart-to-heart conversation. Because I'm already reduced to about 13.5% of the closet. And if I go any smaller, I'll be down to like 2 shirts, right? And so we began to have this conversation. Listen, it's easier in South Florida. You have 2 seasons. You have hot, and then you have not so hot, and it's usually kind of beautiful, and then not. It's kind of like a warm fall season, and you have the super hot season. So you don't need layers of things. So it's a little bit easier to downsize. But ladies, I want to help you. Okay, don't be mad at me. Don't kill the messenger. We walk into your closets. Oh, forgot to say this. If you're pregnant, this does not apply to you. Number 1, I'm terrified of what you might do to me after service. Number 2, I get it. Your body changes in every trimester. And every trimester, you have to have different I get it. We've walked through that 4 times. So if you're pregnant, be exempt, take a little nap, come back to us in about 3 minutes. But for the ladies, you walk into your walk-in closets. You got 57 pair of jeans, 43 outfit top things. You got sweaters, you've got coats, you've got all these things. And to match that, you have 4,322 pairs of shoes. And you walk into your closets, tripping over your shoes. You got to get ready in 30 minutes. You try 14 different outfit options on, and you walk out of there frustrated, and you say, I have nothing to... There we go. Y'all are honest. The ladies in the first service were like, nope, it's true, but I ain't saying it. What would happen if you were to simplify your wardrobe? Listen, I'm trying to help you. I don't care what you wear. I don't. But it was on sale. I had to buy it. Oh, but I don't have that in that color. And I get it. Guys don't understand. We're like jeans, shirt, tennis shoes. I can wear that almost everywhere. If it's a funeral, I'll go shiny shoes. But everything else is the same. So throw a jacket over, right? We're simple. I get it. And guys, it's not all about the ladies. Listen, how many toys do you need in your garage for real? Some of you men, you need to do the thing that we did with our family. Like, listen, our kids do not need any more toys. Every time I walk somewhere in my house, I'm tripping over a Lego or a toy or a stuffed animal. We don't need any more stuff. If you want to bless our family, give us zoo passes or the world's like do something that we can create memories, because we don't need more stuff. What would it look like to simplify your garage? What would it look like to simplify your calendar? Embrace simplicity. And then finally, practice radical generosity. I don't mean generosity like, well, it's the least I could do. I hate when people say that. They stop on the side of the highway, man, you got a flat tire, and somebody out of the goodness of their heart pulls over in the middle of their day to help you change your tire. And you knew it was flat before hypothetical, by the way. You knew it was flat before you left for the office. You just wanted to risk it, thought you could get there a little faster. And now your dumb decision is causing somebody else to pull over and actually help you. It's very humbling. And then when they go, oh man, thank you so much. Well, it's the least I could do. But out of your will. When I'm asking you to think about radical generosity, not like the least I could do. What does it look like to reflect the generosity of God in your generosity? Because generosity loosens greed's grip on our heart and on our soul. Give away something that's meaningful to you. It doesn't have to be money. Give your time. Some of your time is the most precious thing that you have. Leave room to invest in things that really matter. Guys, listen, I'm not telling you this because if our church gives more, I get to make more money. Can we just... That's not what this is about. The church takes care of it. Some of us, our approach to giving is, that's the least I could do. I checked the box this week. I don't know what you give. I don't care to tell you specifically what to eat. Well, what does radical generosity look like to you? To give to your family, to give to your church, and to give to the community. Regular generosity, whether it's money or time or talents, reveals an open hair and an open heart that trusts and God. The gospel, guys, is the good news that even though we've all built our lives on the wrong foundations, trusting in money and performance and approval or pleasure, that God came to rescue us through Jesus, that Jesus lived the life free of guilt, free of sin, free of shame, all the things that trip us up. He lived that life, sinless, generous, and surrendered towards God, and he died the death that you and I were supposed to die on the cross. He took our place and then he rose again, conquering death so that we could know, or we could have peace with God, hope beyond the grave, and real purpose for our lives today. And now, not through effort, but through grace, he offers us a way to be rich in what truly matters. You can surrender to the one who already gave you everything. The gospel is not about earning, it's about trusting. And it's not about storing up, it's about opening your hands and your heart to Jesus. Discover Church, would you pray with me for a moment? Listen, if you walked into this room today and maybe you grew up in a religious context like I did, maybe you don't even know what brought you here today, but somebody just invited you. You didn't even know what we were going to talk about. You never heard of this guy, Jesus. Jesus offers us a better kingdom to participate in. Not one in this world where it's dog eats dog and you have to climb over other people's back to get where you want to go, but a kingdom in where the king would humble themselves and serve his subjects. That's the kingdom of Jesus. You no longer need to try to earn your way to peace with God. Jesus says, you trust in what I did on the cross, and you already have peace with God. And if you never made a decision to surrender your life to Jesus, one authentic yes to the one who loves you enough to suffer and die for you, at the chance that you would receive him and have a relationship with his Father in heaven, then today could be your day. I'm going to invite you to pray a simple prayer that I pray. You don't have to say exactly the words that I do, but just as in a way, an example. If that's you, you can right now in the quiet of your heart or out loud in your seat, you can say right out, Dear Jesus, thank you for loving me. Thank you for dying on the cross for my sins. I surrender my life to you, Jesus. Would you move inside of my heart? And would you make me a new person for this day forward? Thank you for loving me.